Leveling your truck and getting a smooth factory ride don't always go hand in hand. Many aftermarket leveling kits reuse your stock suspension, which leaves you with a factory ride and performance at best, if not worse. Bilstein cuts out the middleman with his 5100 shock kit that includes high-quality adjustable front shocks. These shocks allow you to set your F-150's front ride height from stock to all the way up to 2.1 inches of leveling by using their adjustable spring seat tabs. This installation guide will help you with any F-150 from the year 2009 to 2017, with the minor difference in the lower shock mount shown here. Our install is on a 2017 model. Jack up the truck and remove the wheels for access to the front suspension. You can first remove the dust cap and unbolt the axle from the front hub assembly. The tie rod end can now be unbolted and removed from the knuckle. Hit the knuckle with a hammer if the tie rod is stuck inside the knuckle. Remove the upper control arm from the top of the knuckle, but leave the bolt threaded on a few turns until we are ready to remove the knuckle. Depending on your year F-150, now remove either one or both bolts on the lower shock mount. On the side of the knuckle we have a few brake line brackets that we need to unbolt to create enough slack to move the knuckle. Remove them from the side of the knuckle as well as the frame seen here. Behind the knuckle by the axle is the vacuum line, which can be pulled off for now. Now we're ready to break loose the knuckle from the upper control arm. A few blows with a hammer will do it. A trick we have learned to make this job easier is to loosen the UCA mounts just a bit to take the tension off the control arm, which makes the knuckle removal and reinstallation much easier. A few push pins hold up the dust shield and they can be removed for access to the top shock mounts. Now with access, we can unbolt the 3 bolts in the top of the struts. We are ready to pull the coil over, so remove the upper control arm and prop it up to make room. The knuckle can be set aside. You will most likely need to remove the sway bar to drop the lower control arm enough to pull the coil over. We used a pry bar on the lower control arm and were able to squeeze out the coilover assembly. Use a spring compressor to take the load off the top coilover mount. This will enable you to remove the top nut on the cap. It is important to keep the spring and cap in line with the lower shock mount since they are side specific. Mark the alignment for ease of installation later. The spring and bump stop can be removed from the stock shock, then knock off the lower spring perch with a hammer. Choose your height adjustment on the new Bilstein shock and adjust the clip accordingly. We went with the maximum of 2.1 inches of lift on the top notch. You can see here how the lower mount on the shock is angled. Be sure to correctly reinstall the spring and cap in the same direction as it was removed from stock. Slide on the collar until it stops on the adjustment ring. Next, the lower shock mount can be installed, making sure it is in line with the bottom shock mount. The bump stop and spring are next to be transferred over, followed by the cap. Tighten the top nut on the cap and make sure that everything is in line. Then you can release your spring compressor. Insert the newly assembled shock into the truck. You can slide in the new lower bolts provided in the kit. Now we will begin to reassemble the truck in reverse of removal. Start with a sway bar, which can be loosely attached for now. Then swing the knuckle up into the upper control arm, making sure the axle is properly seated inside the knuckle. Now tighten the axle nut back down. We recommend a 1/4 inch ratchet so you don't over tighten and snap the end of the axle. Move on to the top 3 bolts for the coilover. Once the top bolts are bolted down, you can retighten the upper control arm and replace the dust cover. Back to the UCA, torque down the knuckle mount followed by the sway bar since the knuckle and UCA are back in place. Then reattach the brake line brackets to the knuckle and frame. Slide the vacuum tube back onto the axle and tighten the lower shock mounts while you're down there. The tie rod end can also be replaced into the knuckle, which will then complete our front shock installation. If you purchase the complete Bilstein kit, you will have rear shocks as well. Start by supporting the rear end for safety, then remove both lower and upper mounts on the rear shock to remove it. Replace it with the Bilstein shock by inserting it into either mount, then compress the shock to get it into the other mount using the factory hardware. So in addition to the much improved ride quality, our 2017 F-150 now has an almost completely leveled stance at the maximum lift setting. Check out this Bilstein kit by heading over to our website at stage3motorsports.com.